How are you, Stuart? How are you, Maria?
Very good, thank you.
Good, thanks.
Excellent. I hope you both had a good week.
Yeah, have a good week. Have you had a good week?
Can our listeners and you hear the dog shouting in the background?
I can.
Okay, so we've got a choice now. Either I can disappear off and silence the dog, or we can put up with the dog. Which way would you prefer this to go, listeners?
Get the dog on the call.
Sorry?
Get the dog on the call. Bring him in.
Get the dog on the call. Okay, I'm just going to go and get the dog now. Just wait there, listener.
There we go.
Right.
Now.
I've now opened the door so the dog can come in, so it's not whining because my wife has left. So, welcome to FRB, everybody, and we're going to be talking about respect and trust this morning. And I think what we're going to do, because we've been talking about it so much with the world of responsible business, as we know, the main output from this is trust with customers, trust from society, probably most importantly, trust with your employees. So that's the debate for today. Maria, I'm going to give you only 2 minutes because we've had a dog interruption as well. What were your thoughts on the Trump debate? And what did that say to you about the trust or lack of trust that was happening in that debate this week?
Well, let's put aside whatever side of the fence you're on for a second. But one thing that I think was became the meme of the debate was they're eating the dogs. They're eating the dogs, right? So this was Trump calling out Kamala Harris on her immigration policies and using an example of a city in America where allegedly refugees and immigrants have been eating animals, right? We don't know if that's true or not, but this is what he called out, and this has prompted like viral videos of people getting reactions from Donald Trump saying this, reactions from their dogs, all the way to various agencies attempting to fact check this. And what was quite interesting was that, and this sort of goes to the heart of trust, was that I haven't seen a definitive yes or a definitive no. And what I did see was the commentary afterwards, in fact, was that actually everybody, whoever they were voting for, whether they remained undecided, in general, had stayed the same afterwards, because this was an example of the whole debate where there was so much information, challenge of information, and there wasn't enough trust in either candidate. Everybody just ended up staying the same. Not many people were persuaded over to the other side, let's say, which then sort of begs the point of how much trust do you sort of put in these debates? How much, and it sort of raises, I think, a wider question around when figures, whether they're a political figure or a company figure, adopts a position on something, how do people trust that is the right thing, and that with the right intentions, and that the information is accurate and correct?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've seen this play out in American politics since probably for the last 20 or 30 years, but it's been ramped up to such a scale now where, as you say, nobody really believes what is being said by the candidates. And it's almost as if, on some level, people really don't care. That's what I'm feeling with the American politics at the moment. That's not the point. The point is, I trust this man, or I trust this woman, or the actual facts of the matter don't really count. Which is easy. I find it interesting that BBC News now has got BBC Verify, That's interesting. It's a really good part of the news, actually, and I quite enjoy watching it. Everybody else does, but they do try to bring some evidence to these things. So it's really interesting how this is playing out, and I think we've had it play out in UK politics as well, with the whole fuel payments thing. I think, Stuart, you got some thoughts on that fuel payments sort of story and how that's played out.
Well, yeah. I guess, yeah. The emphasis is obviously taking away fuel payments because of the hole that the Tories left Labour in. But I think the facts is that they lose my trust. The current government, on the basis they talk about a 22 billion gap, where I think the figure is like 15 billion of that has been from decisions Labour have made since being in government. So we're going to have lots of railway drivers feeling nice and toasty this winter, and pensioners not. Now, I'm sure there was a hole of some degree left by the Tories, undoubtedly, right? I'm not debating.
There always is, isn't there? We run with a black hole.
There was always a hole, but you're making decisions, and they're choosing to make decisions in favour of things like railway drivers versus pensioners. Now, so and these are tough decisions. It's not easy, but equally, to blame it all on the Tories and a 22 billion hole is a falsism, right? It's not true. So you lose my trust in their opening statement, and then then the debate on winter fuel payments is neither here or there for me, because they've lost my trust in the first part of the statement, right? And I'm sure, and I know pensioners that are very well off and don't need a winter fuel payment. I also know lots of pensioners that don't have a penny to rub together and need it, right? And so where you draw the line on that, I think, is a difficult choice, right? So I'm not arguing for or against what the government have just done, but I am arguing about the trust issues that go with it, right? And it's just not, it's politicking rather than coming from a basis of trust.
It's really difficult, isn't it? There's a famous guy talking at the moment. Sorry, I can't remember his name, but he says something like, "We've got more information technology in the world today than we've ever had in the existence of humanity, and yet we don't believe anything that's told to us, and we can't find the truth." This is something that we're starting to see play out in companies, in organisations, which is, I guess, where our main priority is, and it's a worrying element, I think, for large organisations, because you could argue that some of those politicians are, as you say, Stuart, making difficult decisions and making them for the right reasons, but because we don't trust politicians, full stop, then we don't know it. We don't trust them. We don't trust the decision that's being made. So I think a lot of companies are now finding this, and in somehow, I don't know quite how to describe it. I think in one of our conversations, Brew, you said it rather eloquently, but there seems to be a picture that's being developed, an agreed state of the world, which is one that we can get away with saying, but that people don't really think is true. They're not really convinced that is the state of play, and they don't buy into it wholeheartedly. And I think all of us have seen this play out in some of the large telcos we worked in, some of the banks, where you get an official documentation or view of what's happening, but within the organization it doesn't strike as real. And I think that's a real problem for companies. I've been sitting in meetings where people have said to me, when we're talking about, for instance, customer trust and customer promise, where they'll say, "Please don't look over my shoulder to what's written on the wall," which is a poster about the company's position on customers. And when you've got that open distrust, I think it's really, really difficult. So what are the mechanisms for building genuine trust? What are your thoughts on that?
Is that for me or for Stuart?
Well, let's give Stuart a go, because this is one of Stuart's favourite subjects. So, what are the mechanisms for building a genuine trust that individuals buy into?
Well, I think it's absolutely about following through on your both walking the talk, right? It's not about just what you say. It's about demonstrating time and time again that is your absolute intent, right? And when we all make mistakes, and people will forgive you when you make mistakes, if you've got a track record of consistently doing your utmost to deliver against your brand promise, right? And it's that consistency of that delivery that moves it from a logical relationship to a gut relationship. And I've done some research on this. People talk about moving from the head-to-head logical to the heart-to-heart emotional style relationship, or even an emotional relationship. It creates a stronger bond, but it doesn't necessarily create trust. You've got to you've got to join at the gut, an instinctive, intuitive, where you trust the brand, to do what's right. And that's when you get huge forgiveness, right? If something goes wrong, because they know the brand inherently meant to do the right thing, right? So you've got to keep on moving that. You do that through that absolute consistent delivery against your promise, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it is the mistakes, it's the times when it goes wrong, or the behaviors that go completely anti that trust, that ruins it. And of course, when we talk responsible business, that trust relationship isn't just with your customers. We talk about the trust with your customers, your employees, your partners, your shareholders, the planet, albeit the planet doesn't get a chance to talk back. It is about looking at it all. You can't, and it's balancing the decision making that you do across all of those stakeholder groups, the regulators and all the others, not just one, right? And it's the consistent way of delivering that builds a trusted brand.
So I really like that. That logical and that emotional person, and that sort of that explains what I was talking about. I think with some of the brands and what the brands say about themselves, it doesn't strike to the emotional side of the person. If you think of thinking fast, thinking slow, and all that stuff, it appeals to the thinking slow but not thinking fast. Maria, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, as Stuart was talking, I was reminded of something I used to taught me two really sort of valuable lessons in trust. So the first one was he used this thing he called it the I see ya model. He was an American. I see ya, but it was actually I and C. So the first one was about showing integrity. So I came to define that as, do I consistently feel like the company or whoever I'm partying with puts my interests at the heart of their decision? They may not make the decision in the end for the benefit of my interests, but do I feel like I've been put at the heart of it? I've been in the mix of it. So that was the I. And then the C was capability. So do I trust that this person or this company's got the chops, got the experience to deliver what they say they're going to deliver? So if I feel like I'm in the heart of their decision making and I feel like they've got the capability to deliver, then trust will build. And that has to, as Stuart said, keep being repeated consistently. And the other lesson that I learned, which I think is really valuable and that companies don't often see, is that when you start building the process of trust, let's say with your employees, with your customers, with your stakeholders, as Stuart's mentioned, you have to assume that you're starting off in debt. And
that's interesting.
And many companies assume that they start off in credit.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And if you start off in debt and you kind of build to create some equity and then you create some credit, then the larger your credit score, if you like, with your stakeholders, the kind of easier the forgiveness is when you do make a mistake, because as Stuart said, mistakes will happen. But if you assume that you're always in credit and you start off in credit, then you'll never really appreciate what it feels like to get to the moment where you feel like, yes, we've got a trusted relationship now.
That's really powerful, Maria, because a couple of things strike me from that. One is the number of times I've heard companies say, we can't afford to lose our customers' trust. And sitting there thinking, wake up, smell the roses, you've lost it already. You should be talking about how we get it back. And also Professor Piot Croft was part of some of the discussions I ran 20 years ago. He was one of the guiding people that guided the revolution, which was eBay at the time. And so trust is his thing. And he would say that the only way you can build trust is by making yourself vulnerable. So he used to use the example of giving somebody a pen, and I used to do this at conferences as well. I used to give people my car keys and say, I'll ask for those back in a little while. So the only way I can start to build trust is to make myself vulnerable. So potentially I'm down a set of car keys or a pen or whatever you want to use. So making yourself vulnerable is the only way to start the building blocks of trust. It's also an interesting way of looking at it. And it's quite difficult for an introvert to build trust, because it tends to start from the I, which is what I was quite interested when you're saying about integrity, because some people would talk about integrity. I think Stuart does, about integrity being, you're probably starting from the wrong point. But as you went on with your explanation, the integrity was yours about them, which flipped it, which was interesting.
Integrity is an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think the definition of integrity is not quite what people often use it for. Integrity, then, and the clues in the title is in. It is about you acting aligned to yourself, to your values, to your beliefs, to your emotions, right? So if you act with integrity, it means you're acting as one. And actually, it's almost that internal trust equation versus the external trust equation, which is an important part of trust. If you can't be at one with yourself, you're unlikely to build those trusted relationships with those external to yourself, right?
Well, okay. Exactly. The psychologist in me. Sorry, Maria, I've got a slight delay. So yeah, carry on.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think if you look on that as a company ecosystem, what does the company need to sort of show integrity to in terms of its stakeholders? Where does it show it's delivering, like you say, it's sort of putting its interest, its internal, and I'd include customers within, the people that the parties to this whole ecosystem. How does it show integrity to that?
Yeah, we've all talked about culture over the years a lot, and as you know, I get a little impatient with the conversation sometimes. But if we're talking about trust, then that's a cornerstone of any business, any organization, any community, any group of people, more than one. If you don't trust yourself, that's a completely different psychological state to be in. But trust is a cornerstone. I don't think it's talked about enough, to be honest, within organizations. If you can trust everyone from the person that is taking products out of a large box and putting them on shelves ready for delivery, you have to trust that person's going to do it, and they have to be responsible for their actions. They have to check, they have to make sure everything is in good order, they have to put the right things in the right places. Then you've got team leaders, you've got people talking to customers, you've got leaders, you've got senior leaders, and are they acting in a responsible fashion? Are they really trusted by the people around them? And we've all, to be honest, been in meetings where a team leader or somebody in a level of responsibility in an organization will demonstrate their mistrust for a different function or for the leadership, and they'll say, well, we know that's not true, and we need to do this, so or go this direction. And I think that's one of the cornerstones of any successful organization, that there is that level of level of trust. It's so fundamental to how the gears of an organization would work. I'm really surprised companies don't spend more time looking at it and don't call it out when they see bad behavior.
I think it's also, the counter is can be very telling, right? So it's the level of distrust in a company. So there's one is building trust, and but you can also do things that undermine trust implicitly. So it's creating distrust, right? And you definitely see organizational failure when the level of distrust has reached its peak, and sometimes distrust can just be created by void, right? If you don't fill the void with communications, if you're not an open company, you don't engage your employees, you don't inform, you do not share objectives and performance and things, then people fill the void with their own thoughts, and that can create and undermine any of that trust equation.
It's interesting. Yes, and you can play with that. If you know what you're doing, you can play with that void. I think I do remember somebody going into a different organization and causing a void so that everyone paid attention when they filled that void. I think they did a presentation on the difference between love and lust, I seem to remember. Was that presentation, Stuart? So anybody in that bank that saw that presentation will know why Stuart is laughing. But I think this is very true, and that communication is really, really important. And perhaps going back to where we started with Mr. Trump, is that if you tell so many lies, and there's so much people cannot ascertain the truth, then it's just down to who you believe. But I don't think anyone wins in that situation, and this is what we're seeing in play out in lots of organisations. You get as you say, Stuart, a logical sort of buy-in to something, but there's no real follow through, no trust.
But it's interesting whether trust really matters in some instances. So go back to the Trump equation. I guess you've got to question whether people who follow Trump and back Trump actually trust him, right? My view is, do they believe that every immigrant in Ohio is eating pets? No, I'm sure they don't, right? I think they're a little bit more sensible than that, but I think they're backing Trump because he's almost anti-establishment, right? And actually, it's almost the fact that he storytells without the need for facts. Don't let facts get in the way. They almost like and admire the bullshiness and the anti-establishment of what he stands for. And the more he does it, the more they like him. But does it mean they trust him? I don't think they trust him. I don't think they're silly enough not to believe everything he says.
Yeah, but I sort of agree that's what the dynamics of what's happening, but it's very, very dangerous.
Of course,
because they are trusting him. Actually, the whole damn world is trusting whoever the president of the United States is to a certain extent. That he doesn't go and punch Putin on the nose and come back with next we got a nuclear war. So it is a very dangerous set of circumstances when people just push away, disregard. Okay, none of it's true, but I prefer that mistruth than the other mistruth. And I think that's a very dangerous. And I do see it playing out in some of the situations that I'm help coaching people in. That there is a general understanding that the official version of the truth isn't the truth. And that is a frightening place for companies and organizations, any community of people to be operating. And we see it play out as well when we talk about all the different elements that we've been having exploration sessions on over the last year or so. It's that there's not that consistency. And without that consistency, I think it just adds another layer of mistrust and misunderstanding. What are your thoughts on consistency, Maria?
Well, I think it. I think it's sort of is key. It's absolutely key to trust. So if I think about work that I do, which is mainly in the sort of customer service space, let's go for an example. So let's say that the company is the sort of establishment figure. So the governmental, the establishment figure, right? So they're meant to be the responsible kind of guiding factor that's going to sort of steer the company forwards. Well, if that company starts adopting positions that don't quite feel right, or employees think, hang on a minute, I'm dealing with a client at the moment that's put in a chatbot, right? This is a really tiny example, but they have promised the employees that it will provide the customers with better experience, employees won't be affected, but basically it's the kind of panacea. AI is the panacea to everything, right?
Yeah.
The cost has kind of ballooned out the window. It's not even their code. It's not even their generative AI. It's it's a kind of platform one that's been brought in. The customer experience is rubbish. Agents are tearing their sort of hair out and burnt out because volume's gone higher, but there's no budget to hire any more staff. So, and yet the company up to very recently was sort of peddling this, no, it's all going to be good, it's all fine, it's just early teething problems. And you kind of think, from an agent perspective, if you're lying to me about this when I can see it with my own eyes, what else are you lying to me about? And that's where I think the consistency issue occurs, is if a company peddles a position so much that people just doesn't feel right to people, and people can go, well, I can see that it's not working. What else are you lying about?
You raised two subjects there. So AI.
I am sorry, it's got.
Great. AI is a big trust play. Okay, we'll come on to that one. Stuart is writing notes furiously. We've got AI morality. Here we go. But it is a big trust play. But also that feel right is also a bit of a distraction, and it can be wrong. That can mean that companies can't move direction. But it's back to where Stuart. There's two things of that. One is the response. How responsible was the decision in the first place to go with the chatbot? And this is where we're building our framework of how do you make responsible decisions, because that hasn't played out well. But as Stuart said, you can make mistakes. But if it's played out that badly, then you've got to question whether that was a responsible decision to make in the first place. Then it's how it's communicated to the employees, and where are the warning signs in there when it starts to go wrong? How far are we going to go? Where's the communication?
Well,
So
for the agents, it was just done to them, right? And they're picking up the pieces. So that's
so thank you, Marie. These are the sort of responsible decision making situations that we're looking at. Stuart, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think again AI gets slammed in these circumstances an awful lot, and probably quite rightly, Maria. So I don't know the specific case. But equally, yeah, AI is never going to get it right 100% of the time, but neither do human beings, right? So and the one time the AI gets it wrong, everyone jumps on it like a bandwagon, but they don't talk about the fact that when John Smith got it wrong the day before, right? It's like and as long as your AI, and you can prove this through and you should verify and continually verify and hone the models, as long as it's getting it right more often than the humans, then it should be more trusted than the humans. It doesn't mean it is 100% correct 100% of the time, because it won't be, right? But it's a balance of probability that you can prove statistically with maths, right? That whether it's more right or not. And if it's not more right, then you need to continually hone your models until it is, and not subject your customers or your employees or whatever it might be to it until it is, right? So but I don't think I don't think it's a reason for not pursuing AI as a model. I think you just need to make sure you've got your verification process in place.
Okay, so we're at the end of our time, and the dog started barking again, as you could hear. So apologies for that. So I think this is why we're looking at the future of business is all going to be won or lost on responsibility and on trust, because that seems to be where we are going. So thank you, everybody. Sorry about the dog barking, and we'll see you all next week.